and he was totally ineffectual, as you.
Right.
And they definitely tried to sabotage our efforts. We'd gather coachloads of people on tours around Arthursides. You get to where you're having lunch, and someone had rung up and cancelled the lunch or something like this, you know. All sorts of dirty tricks. But the research is ongoing. We're as popular as the rattlesnake in the Lucky Dip, as I said.
In 1986, BBC London interviewed you in Cardiff. Just tell us what happened there.
They came to the house and we said, well, it's open house. You can see anything you want. Let's show them everything we had. And it's on there. They said, would you be prepared to go to the various sites and show the journey, where the ship arrives at the Owenny River in the records, take us to where the, there's a stone naming Arthur and 4 of his relatives at Ogmore Castle, you see, just upriver. Show us where the army gathered to go to the Mount of Baden, show us where the church is, will you show us around? So we said, yeah. And we took them and showed them around. And so BBC TV made this piece, and it went out the next day on the 1 o'clock news, and it went out on the 6 o'clock news.
The time is 6:16. In common with most historians, the two men believe that Arthur was an authentic king of Britain who gave rise to the legends of Camelot, the Sword and the Stone, Guinevere, and the Knights of the Round Table. Laurie Mayer reports.
The apparent proof that King Arthur was man, not myth, is kept at the bottom of a garden in Cardiff. This ancient sword-shaped stone inscribed Rex Artorius, King Arthur, comes from what's claimed to be the legendary king's last resting place. The stone is said to have arrived by boat up the Owenny River near Bridgend 1400 years ago. In their lifelong quest for the real King Arthur, amateur historians Alan Wilson and Baram Blackett have put their interpretation on ancient manuscripts.
An impeccably authentic manuscript of the year 822 tells of the body of a very important man with a stone being brought up this estuary. This is the secret burial of Arthur.
The delivery of Arthur's body upriver was, so the story goes, kept secret because his son was too young to succeed him. According to Wilson and Blackett, this is the very cave where the body was temporarily buried. They point to signs of a square-cut grave hewn by hand from the rock. They claim the local church provides evidence of Arthur's family links with the area. Burial stones they regard as vital clues in their historical detective work.
And this is the stone of Paul, son of Myrick, a brother of King Arthur.
At Ogmore Castle, just down the road, they cite another stone actually naming a King Arthmail, which they translate as Arthur. Wilson and Blackett have now filled several volumes with their exhaustive fieldwork and research, a mass of evidence from so many sources that even academics find it hard to contradict. This bleak hillside, 1,000 feet up, marks the end of their quest. In a church they describe as the Westminster Abbey of the Dark Ages. Wilson and Blackett claim it's cost them their homes, their jobs, and £100,000 to find this spot and say with confidence that here lies King Arthur.
Half Britain was waiting to see it, and at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, they scrubbed it.
Right. So...
You know why they scrub it, don't you?
Right, well, tell me.
Well, they don't want people to see it.
So they'd done this article about the various King Arthur sites.
Aye. But they phoned up Alcock from
Leslie Alcock.
Aye.
Just remind us who he is.
Leslie Alcock was a second lieutenant in the Indian Army in 1939. He had 3 weeks leave. Instead of taking the ship home to take 7 weeks, he took his 3 weeks leave, went to Mohenjo-Daro, where Mortimer Wheeler was digging up the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan.
Right.
He then came to Cardiff University, where Wheeler had been before the war, and said, I was at the dig at Mohenjo-Daro. He didn't say he just spent 3 weeks there.
Yeah.
And I'm an archaeologist, see?
Right.
So they gave him a job in the archaeology department. He's got no qualification in history or archaeology.
Right.
In due course, he became professor. No qualification again.
Right.
And for 7 years, he took Cardiff University over to Somerset, digging up Cadbury Hill, because he thought it was Cadbury Hill was King Arthur's hill. Like.
Right.
Well, he does say in his book that all the names on Cadbury Hill that might purport to Arthur and so on were invented and forged in 1536 by John Leland, the King's antiquary. So in other words, he's wasting everything.
So this is he still going then, Leslie Alcock?
He left Cardiff after damaging everything like that and wrecking. I mean, King Arthur is a Welsh king, you know, in Somerset.
So the BBC obviously wanted to get...
He went to Glasgow. And,
right. Okay, so when the BBC came to you in Cardiff...
They were trying to get the lowdown.
86, they were trying to get the lowdown, as they do, but they then wanted, obviously, a critical eye, and a critical expert, shall we say.
Yeah.
So they rang him up.
From my house.
Says,
Yes,
right, let's have the other side.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Let's have the other side of the story because we've got to have some balance.
Well,
and we've got to have the other viewpoint. And so he then spoke on the phone. Was that part of their TV
we were all
program?
there being quiet, and he said that the inscriptions on a stone were obviously forged because the lettering was all wrong. So they shut off then. They were there 2 days.
Yeah.
They went on the Welsh Museum and other places, and they looked at a stack of ancient stones. So they came back to the house. Can we phone him again? I said, be my guest. And they phoned up Leslie Alcock and they said, look, we've been down to the Welsh National Museum, we've been to other museums and places, we've seen a lot of stones, there's nothing wrong with the lettering that we can see.
Yeah.
Said, well, that proves it's a good forgery.
Right.
Before it was nothing like the lettering, now
So
it's
it just
identical
proves it's a good forgery.
And everybody was falling and laughing.
Right. So do you think these BBC people who came to your house had good intentions? They were just
Definitely.
genuinely interested?
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
But their report was then pulled from the later news items.
It went on the 1 o'clock news. It was widely received. Phones were ringing all over the place. It went on at 6 o'clock news, and half Britain must have been waiting at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and they pulled it, and they showed a piece on Sarah Ferguson squeezing herself into a tiny little aeroplane to have flying lessons instead. There we go.
Yeah, well, I want to see that.
Oh yeah, what an edifying sight. Bum.
Tell us about the Welsh. So, remind me, there was a case where you had books that were being stocked by bookshops in Cardiff.
Yeah, well, we were selling quite a lot of books in Cardiff at first, and Tony went in. He saw Mrs. Bennett in Lear's, which later became Waterston's, a biggest shop in Cardiff for books.
What year are we talking about?
We're
here?
talking about 86, when we published the
King
fourth book.
Arthur's books. Yeah.
And they sold 500 books in no time, like, you know. And she said that MI5, two guys came in claiming to be MI5, and I told her that she shouldn't be selling any of our 4 books, and threatened her rather aggressive. So she said, I put them all down in the cellar. I said, well, people come in, they see a book on the shelf, I said, they buy a book in the cellar's no good, unless they ask for it.
But I mean,
then
how does that work?
Dylan's opened up.
Will an MI5 person do that? Say
Well,
that they're MI5?
Yeah, I don't know.
So that's what she's told you.
So Dylan's opened up a bookshop near the new library. I went in and I spoke to the assistant manageress. I think her name was Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Davis, right? And she took 17 books. I went back 3 days later, they'd all sold. But she was in a panic. She was like this.
Right.
And she said, oh, come on. So I went out of the shop into a little arcade around the corner. It was raining. She said, oh, I've had MI5 in. I've had people in. I mustn't sell your books, you know.
And which book was this?
This was all 4 first ones, the 3 big ones.
The Arthurian ones.
And the Arthurian, Artorius Rex.
Right.
And she was trembling. She was frightened. I thought, oh, boy, you know, this is it, you know. Now, this is something that was going on. Now, the Gloucester and Cheltenham had a shop in St Mary Street. There's 2 main streets, Queen Street, St Mary Street. And they had a corner shop in the street. Now, nobody looks much in Gloucester and Cheltenham books, windows, right? So we had an idea. We said, you've got a nice window there doing nothing. How about we put a display up of our books and everything and charts? I just said, hey, that's a good idea. So we'd get them looking in the window, wouldn't it? I said, yeah. So they put a display up in the window. Well, we used to go along, and within the days, there'd be a crowd of people looking at all these dynasty charts and pictures that we had there. There'd be people stopping and looking.
Yeah. It's in Cardiff.
In Cardiff.
Yeah.
They never had this in the British Society before.
Right.
2 guys went in to see him. He called it. We went to see him. They spent 45 minutes trying to get him to take the display out of his windows.
Right.
And he said no.
Right.
And so he told his directors, and one of them came over from Cheltenham. It's at Cheltenham and Gloucester, actually. And saw the window, and they bought him a bottle of champagne. Said, wonderful, good stuff. But they were trying, whoever it was, trying to get the, you know, the first books we ever supplied to Cardiff Library, we had to go and supply a second set. They got stolen.
Right.
And the next was stolen. People don't steal a book from a library because they want a book. They steal a book from a library to stop other people reading it.
Yeah. Let's come on to the excavation in 1990. Now, to tell us first, Alan, about John Carr, because I think he wrote an article about the church that you mentioned earlier that you bought, trying to claim it was Norman. Is that right?
Yeah,
12th
what happened,
century.
John Carr, they were going to appoint a head of Cadw, Welsh heritage, really. And I didn't get an interview. But John Carr, from Nottingham in England, knowing nothing about Welsh history, he got the job.
Right.
And it's a hopeless appointment. He's not a historian for a start. He shouldn't have been given the bloody job, but he got the job. He worked 21 years for Thompson Press, so work it out. Anyway, he suddenly, around before Christmas of 1990, right? He's like this
89,
article.
yeah.
And it appeared in the press, and it just simply said, St. Peter's Supermontum Church, is a 12th century Norman building. Well, people are ringing us up and saying, what's this about? What's this one column about St. Peter's being...
And you'd already declared it to be the oldest church
Hang on, yeah.
in Europe.
Well, what it would mean is that the Welsh triads would be wrong, because they nominated it as the most important church in the UK twice. The land of charters would be wrong. The history would be wrong, because King Lairug, Alathurus, could not have renovated it around the year 160. Emrys
160.
Wedig and his mother could not have been living there when they met the ambassadors of Vortigern around 450. That massive histories would be wrong. Everything would be wrong if that church is not there. It's just that the man was ignorant to the nth degree on history.
But do you think there's an ulterior motive why he's writing that article then?
Oh,
Alan?
yeah.
Which is what?
Oh, well, they simply don't want us proving that church is the place of Arthur or anything else. They don't. I mean,
So,
you've got an Englishman, he's coming to Wales, he knows bugger all about Welsh history, use the word. And he's obviously out of his depth. He's feeling out of his depth because people are constantly talking about us, and he doesn't know what the hell to say.
Now, you applied for permission to dig up this site
Aye.
in February 1990,
That's right.
and the authorities were supposed to give 7 weeks to respond.
Yeah, they have 7 weeks maximum. They can tell you the next day if yes or no.
Right. And
But they took 24, 25 weeks.
right. And so you didn't start the dig until late summer because of that.
We had angry meetings with members of Parliament about it. What the hell's going on? They were trying to stop us doing the dig.
And
Didn't want to be proved wrong.
right. And this is where you found the King Arthur burial cross.
Yeah, the cross is there.
Just
aye.
tell us about the cross, Alan. And
Richard Melbourne found it.
Richard Melbourne. Was he an archaeologist?
No, he's one of the diggers.
It's just here on the table.
It's on there.
Some,
Yeah, you want to see it?
can I touch it with my hand, Alan, or do you
Yeah,
rather
you
not?
can touch it with your hand if you like.
Right,
It's
okay.
not-
Right, so tell us, Alan, what it's made from, because you've had it independently, scientifically
we asked-
analysed.
Yeah, we wrote to the National Museum of Wales and said, will you analyse it for us? No, if we're supposed to be forgers, we're not going to do that, are we?
Yeah.
We asked them to analyse it. They refused to analyse it. Some English archaeologists there refused to analyse it. Okay?
But it's electrum, which is 79% silver, I believe.
Yeah, so we took it to the largest and most reputable company in this sort of business who do all the work for the oil companies and everybody else. And they've got all the systems there, and they have all the necessary tables and records historically, which show what the mix of various impurities would be in certain eras. You follow me?
Sure.
And they've tested it for us. And there's a man on a horse. You can pick him out in the middle.
Oh, in the middle there.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is,
Yeah.
There-
It looks like he's
there's
carrying
an
a
ancient
is he
gravestone
carrying a
of a
sword?
king of around 400, right? In the Landock Cemetery. And one part of the sort of embellishments shows 5 heads on the one thing, and the central one is wearing a crown. Another shows a man on a horse, which appears to be identical to that. But that's Arthur, supposed to be.
Oh, on this cross here,
one,
that's King Arthur. Yeah.
It should be.
Is that King Arthur
Well,
1
we
or
think it should be, but it doesn't say it is.
is
but
it
we
King
think-
Arthur 1 or 2 though?
2.
King Arthur 2.
Yeah. So, the Landock Cemetery stone also has the same sort of man on a horse,
Yeah.
So we that's the best we could do,
So
Now, we
You were
found
ex-
the entry to the crypt,
Mhm.
but by being delayed through a marvellous spring and summer, it's a very exposed place, this hill. It's about 900 feet high and it's straight down the Severn Atlantic in front of it, right? Well, you get sudden storms there and you get a storm, very windy and terrible, bad weather. The site was hit by a 100-mile-hour gale, wrecked the tents, wrecked everything. Then it was hit by two 70-mile-hour gales in the next 2 weeks, and that was the end of the dig. But we got 5 feet down the shaft to try and get into the crypt, you see, 5.5 feet. And Pete Summer and and we got little rods of steel, which we could buy, steel rods. We tapped them down with a mallet, and they all went down to the same level, and they were hitting a flat surface, which sounded like a stone, you know. So we think there's a slab stone. We believe there's a crypt there, because this shaft is not there for nothing.
Which you think?
There's a shaft, there's clearly a shaft about 5 feet by 5 feet.
So you think the body of King Arthur's in there?
Could be.
Is that King Arthur 1 or 2?
Be two.
King Arthur 2, right? Okay.
King Arthur one's in Warwick.
But because the dig was wrecked, you'd run out of money. Had you?
Yeah,
So you couldn't actually excavate the rest of it. I mean, is that not? Has no one been back there since?
It
or?
was wrecked. There was huge storms. It was battered to pieces. We put a 6-foot fence around it, which you can legally entitled to do, as long as it's within 1 yard of the walls, you see. And we put a lovely steel gate on it, and that's been torn down and removed.
Been torn down and removed.
Aye.
Right. What, by vandals or?
Farm.
Farmer, right? Okay. So what's the situation with it now, Alan? Is it just it's not? No one's actually gone back there and excavated it then?
Well, we haven't got the money to do it. I mean, someone should.
So if
there are a number of excavations wanted in that vicinity, and we've got the only pulse style that I know of in Britain. It's down in London with our colleague Alan Hassel, and that'll read metal down to 30 feet underground. It'll differentiate between silver and
ferrous and non-ferrous.
non-ferrous.
Yeah.
And certainly there's a lot up on that hill.
Okay.
Hell of a lot.
There was a headline in a newspaper which read, "Head of the Ku Klux Klan holding ceremonies at St. Peter's Church." This is the church that you'd bought.
That's right.
Where you've uncovered the King Arthur
Well,
stuff.
in the late 80s, a man who had... you've got to realise the Martin Luther King the episode, and the blacks finally getting the fair play in America was on. This fellow had been taken to America by his parents when he was 6 from the Mustang Rally. He'd got himself in with extreme right-wing people, Ku Klux Klan, and in order to evade any consequences, he actually fled back to Britain. He's born in Britain, he's taken out of his country when he's 6, he's entitled. So he returns to the Mustang Valley. Well, we think Dowdle and his friends were messing around with the church, you know.
This is Gareth Dowdle. Just
Dowdle.
remind us who he is, Alan.
He's the secretary of the Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust Company Limited, which is stealing all the money.
Who didn't have a degree and said he did and all the rest of it.
Con man.
So it's a con man. Right, so
now, lurid headlines, the Ku Klux Klan are holding black masses at St. Peter's Church and all this.
Wouldn't you think that Dowdle instigated this?
Oh, I'm sure of it.
But have you got any proof of that, though, or not?
Well, only verbals.
But, okay, only verbals, right,
but
okay.
The thing I don't mind putting in writing.
Right.
The next thing that happens is that...
So just to interrupt you there, Alan, what's their motivation for putting such stories in the press? Just to try and discredit the site itself?
Discredit the site and us. Because we would obviously be... And then tell stories of grave robbing at the church.
This appeared in the media as well?
Yes. So and we are supposed to be doing that.
Robbing graves, right.
There was so much in the press that Jeremy Knight, who was employed by the Ancient Monuments Commission in Wales for ancient monuments, he's English, of course, not Welsh. He couldn't drive, he'd have a driving licence. And for 14 years, he employed little girls who he sent around the sites to look for him. Now, which is mad, he's supposed to be the expert, not them. So there's so much fandango about St. Peter's. He could go like to Cardiff and Newport, to the castle in Cardiff and the town centre easily enough. But anything outside, he was helpless. He kept the job anyway. But the point is that there's so much of a fuss over this St. Peter's thing with the Ku Klux Klan and grave robbery and all. that he decides to go up and have a look for himself. So he got a bus to Talbot Green, a bus from Talbot Green to Lanharan, and he says, there's the hill, and he tries to go up and see the church.
Yes.
He's only had the job for 14 years, looking after the church, among other things, and he can't find it.
Right.
So he goes back down to Lanharan, back to Talbot Green. He went into the police station there. He saw, I think it's Sergeant Well-Beloved or Dear Love, it's one of them names, you know, and said, I can't find the church. And so they said, oh, get the constable, drive him up the mountain, show him the church. So the constable puts him in the car, takes him up and says, there's your church, right? Now, that's all that happened there. Now, then, within days, we went up. I went up with Jane Isaacs, a staff reporter from the press, a photographer, and Councillor Gerald Edwards, a local councillor, right? So we got up to the church, and it was about 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. And the place was a hell of a mess. And there was wet paint everywhere, paint that had just been daubed on that day, graffiti, foul language. There were holes dug all over the place, earth flung up, obviously still damp and wet, and it was a dry enough day. It'd be done within hours, right?
Yes.
And this is 2 in the afternoon we're finding this.
So this is shortly after you knew that this other guy had been there.
Yeah.
What was his name again?
Jeremy Knight.
Right.
Now, so the ancient monuments has been up, look, we've been up. Now, it transpired later that a friend of ours, Willie Laird, had been up the mountain that day, and he'd seen 3 people at the church early in the morning, 9 o'clock-ish, including, and they appeared to have tools with them. And because there were stones smashed and hammer blows, you know, all sorts of things, real damage. And he identified one as Dowdall, right? Right. Now that afternoon,
Gareth Dowdall.
Next morning, Thursday morning, front page of the Western Mail, article about vandal